An apple a day keeps the doctor away, but a glass of OJ keeps the adversary at bay. Here's Oddjob.
Hey, it's time for a glass of OJ. I'm Oddjob. So, today I want to talk about superstitions. And you may have seen a toot on Mastodon or a post on LinkedIn where I was gathering your list of superstitions that you see in InfoSec and IT. And I've actually compiled a few of them here and come up with a couple of my own. So thanks to everyone who is providing those. And in doing so, I found that there were actually 3 levels or 3 different types of superstitions that we have in IT and InfoSec. So we're going to go through those. But why, OJ, are we talking about superstitions? Like, what does this have to do with IT? What does this have to do with InfoSec? Why do we care? Well, a superstition, according to the dictionary, how we use the word, is a belief or practice that is a result of ignorance, fear of the unknown, perhaps a trust in magic, and a false conception of causation. And also a notion maintained despite evidence to the contrary. So if you have a belief or you have a notion that something is caused by something else, and it's based on maybe I don't know, but this seems to be the case and it's not really, or you have some other type of explanation that doesn't seem grounded in reality, it could be a superstition, and so we have some of those in information security. So some classic superstitions I'm sure we're all aware of are things like knocking on wood. If you say something good's going to happen, then you knock on wood because, you don't want anything bad to jeopardize the good thing that you just said was going to happen. It could be if salt spills over, you throw some over your shoulder because of bad luck or bad portents that this bodes ill of. You also could be step on a crack, break your mother's back, right? That's a cute rhyme. And you wonder, where did that come from? I love etymology of phrases and sayings because as we as people kind of have developed our language and we have developed the way we talk to each other, rhymes are a very good way to remind us of things because the ack and ack, it sticks in the brain better because of the pattern match there. So step on a crack, break your mother's back. What does that mean, though? There was probably a valid reason why someone didn't want someone to step on cracks. Perhaps it meant like the ice, don't step on ice that is cracked. Don't step on a crack. You break your mother's back. Perhaps if you see cracks in, a surface that you're going to be working on or stepping on, well, don't step on that cracked area because maybe it's weaker now. And so, they use the rhyme to more or less just enforce, the seriousness of, not wanting to do that. But step on a crack, break your mother's back. There are people to this day who will avoid cracks. Even though they say it would do nothing, there's just something inside them that they will just avoid a crack or stepping on it, or they will prefer not to step on a crack because of that rhyme. That is a superstition. I think we all get that. And so in InfoSec, in IT, so many things have been abstracted, right? So when you say step on a crack, break your mother's back, and that's kind of the axiom, that's the thing that's offered. What's abstracted away is the reasoning. You get a what, but you don't get a why. And so but the what seems to keep you out of trouble. The what seems to keep things bad from happening. So clearly this works. So when the what seems to work, but you have no idea why, or, you may have a what that you think because of bad pattern matching in the brain causes a bunch of other whats to happen, you still don't have an idea as to why. So we have abstractions in IT, right? So we have hardware, firmware versus software, right? Software based on language that's, translates into machine code, which actually speaks to the hardware and tells and instructs the hardware exactly how to operate this information and this data. And so when you're writing and thinking about writing your code, there could be errors in the language. There could be issues with the way the language is written. and the way the language itself is structured, that causes issues that go on underneath. And so, understanding how that language relates to the machine code, though, is something that's really abstracted away from you unless you're that person who works very hard in the language and that machine code language barrier there. Unless you work at that level, you're not going to understand it, so it's been abstracted from you. So there's certain guardrails and certain things we put on ourselves to be like, you don't really know what's going on here, but things always seem to work better when you do this or when you do that. Think about virtualization. Now we don't even have hardware we even think about. We don't even have a real CPU we think about. It still operates the same. And it's all software. And then we have the cloud, and we have orchestration and DevOps, where you don't even have software anymore. You don't even have all of this. You have a sheet of code in GitHub that, is like 20 lines long that describe your application and the environment it should be spun up in. And then it just does, and you just browse to it, and you've got an application running. The more abstractions, the more superstitions one starts to develop because of the level of knowledge you no longer have as to the why things happen the way they happen. So understanding why is very important in InfoSec and IT at different levels. We can't all understand the why to everything, but understanding that there is a why and understanding the need to know the real why behind things is important. And unfortunately, when we do come across superstitions in IT and InfoSec, those get in the way of us really understanding the why, which gets in the way of us doing better and operating better in IT and InfoSec. So 3 levels of superstitions that I encountered as I was going through some of the responses. I found that things that are used as justification without critical examination but are no longer relevant, though they may have been in the past. Things that seem to do something effective without any real explanation. So we actually do have an input that results in a reliable output. We just have no idea why that does the way it does, and it seems kind of head scratchy. But every time we do it this way, it seems to work, and so we just do that. And then things we think cause bad or potentially good things to happen, but really have no influences on events or circumstances. And I want to start with that one because that's the most interesting one. I think it's the most pure to the superstition core. And so let's start with that one. Blowing into RAM slots before inserting RAM, which also reminded me back in the late 80s, early 90s of NES cartridges. So when you think about a RAM slot, you think about NES cartridges too, because they have kind of the same thing. There's basically a board with some pins on it or some circuit pads on there that you would insert into another medium that would then grab onto those pads to provide that conductive medium so that signals and data can flow in and out of every single one of those pins. Well, when our games wouldn't work when we were kids, right, or even today, and they just wouldn't load right, or they would load with a glitch, we'd go, we'd blow right into the slot, or we would take the I'm just gonna take it off the wall here. We'd take our big SNES cartridge too, and we go, and then we'd ka-chunka it right back into the SNES or the NES. It's one of the few times you're going to see me actually rip something off my wall just to make a point. That's so cool that was there. So we would do that. And, sometimes it would work. And we'd go like, yay, it worked. But how many times did we do it and it didn't work, right? Again, it's that brain thing where when something's successful, our brain really likes it. When something not just not successful, but bad happens, our brain goes, I don't like that. Let's remember it. So every time it worked, we went, yay, let's do that in the future. And that spreads by people giving advice to each other too. Like, oh, did you blow in the cartridge? Sometimes that works. And so, you do that. And It never worked. It never actually worked. There was actually no influence that had on events and circumstances. The only thing is if, for instance, maybe you left your NES cartridge standing up, and it was gathering dust for months and months and years, and then you tried to insert it, knowing that it was dirty on the inside and just covered in stuff. Or maybe, someone poured candy or soda or Pop Rocks and other stuff in there, and so the contacts actually did get gunky. Maybe you cleaned those off, you gave it a little bit of a blow to take off the dust. Okay, that makes sense. But when I looked at my NES cartridge every time, I'm like, I don't see any issues. There's no dust. There's no anything. But let's blow. Let's blow on there to clean it off somehow. All the stuff that's magically there is going to go away. The pixie dust, and we can insert it. And this person that was telling me he inserts RAM into RAM slots, but he blows out the slots each time, regardless of whether they're actually dirty or anything. It could be a brand new motherboard, from the factory. It's all clean and sealed and everything. Still going to blow into that RAM slot. Probably has no influence on those circumstances or events if it's a clean RAM slot. Another one was using Magic 8-Ball to make code push scheduling decisions. I love this. It's really like, that's very superstition. Like, ooh, a Ouija board, or this thing. Like, oh my gosh! And I said, did you really think the Magic 8-Ball was causing you to have success with your stuff? Because they were having really good maintenance windows and code pushes. Things worked well. It's like, did you really think the Magic 8-Ball was the one that was making the decisions? They said, no, it was really just a joke, because our system was that good that we could take it down whenever and, not have to worry too much about the scheduling. We just take it down. So we were so confident in that we could just use that Magic 8-Ball and we could take it down, bring it back up, and everyone just trusted our schedules because we never caused issues, which is a level of abstraction there. They just trusted you. If they knew they were just shaking a Magic 8-Ball, someone might go, whoa. Let's talk. Let's go through change control with a little bit more scrutiny than a Magic 8-Ball, right? But yeah, the Magic 8-Ball. And they said now it's just become a fun ritual we have. It's just we just do it, and that's really what it is. But you think 10, 20, 30 years down the road, if that company has passed that Magic 8-Ball down the line, who's to say there's not going to be some IT manager at something that just goes, yes, the Magic 8-Ball shall decide, right? And shakes it and makes the decision, and it still works. Or maybe it doesn't. But, then they might blame the Magic 8-Ball. The Magic 8-Ball did us wrong today. Oh, no. So that's a type of superstition when you're consulting these things. I thought that was a little fun. That was a fun one. But the most pure, chef's kiss, pure superstition that I saw was, don't use the Q word in the knock. The Q word. Oh my gosh, it's really quiet today in the knock. Oh, the suck. We're not having many incidents. It's really quiet out there in the threat actor universe today, isn't it? Ransomware. Right? That's what's going to happen. You're going to jinx the good fortune we have here. We have good luck. We have fortune. We say something is unfortunate. When luck and fortune have nothing to do with it. It just is the combination of all these things. You could just, to us, it looks like random number generation in a video game. We were just unfortunate. RNGesus didn't bless us today, right? Because the world simulation that we have going on here just didn't have the right cards for us to have this favor today. That's how we talk about it, but we talk about it in luck. And if you use the Q word, you will directly influence the causation of the cosmos, and the cosmos will make sure certain events now happen all by themselves that should have taken days, months, and years in the making to arrive at this point. But now it's all going to come together just to make sure you have a bad day because you dared said the word quiet in the knock or the sock. But there are people who take that so seriously, and they will actually blame people. They're like, yes, if you wouldn't have said that, we wouldn't have had this issue. Really? You really think that? You really think if this person not jinxed you, had not said something, that wouldn't have happened? You really think that? That's pure superstition. And there are people who will hold on to that. That's probably one of the purest superstitions we have in IT and InfoSec today, is saying certain words or doing that, because that's kind of common still in our society, is we think, oh no, you said that. And so now, oh, now it's not going to happen. And unfortunately, sometimes these things can also, by saying a thing, you can also sometimes make a self-fulfilling prophecy, because now other people or yourself are going to try to fulfill that. So let's move on to things that seem to do something effective, but you just don't have an explanation for it. So this isn't so much we ignore the misses, right? We actually take a look at the input and we have an output, and it's consistent every single time relational to the input, but we have no idea why this functions the way it does. And it may seem odd why you have to make it do this, because it would seem you could take a more direct route to actually make something happen, but because of the circuitous route you take, you always end up with a reliable result, but I have no idea why you got to do that. One of them that I've always thought about is rebooting Cisco routers and switches. My God. Now, sometimes I could just reboot a Cisco switcher router and on a major config change that requires a reboot, and everything would be fine. Very few times, though. Almost every single time. Or I changed the image. I updated the image to Cisco. I have to reboot 3 times. I kid you not, reboot 3 times. Great. And I've had other people in service industry that will go, oh yeah, we rebooted the Cisco switch, like you said, and our phones still aren't up, or our computers still aren't up. What's going on? Yeah, how many times did you reboot it? Well, just the once. We made the change. Reboot it 2 more times. Wait, 2 more times? Yes, reboot it once, let it come all the way back up, and then go ahead and shut it back down and let it come all the way back up. Okay. Oh, hey, stuff started working. Yeah, for some reason you just have to do that. For some reason, you don't know why, but oh my, you have to do this. And I swear, I have no idea to this day. It's not documented anywhere, but you go ask any Cisco engineer out there, you ask anybody who's dealt with Cisco switches and routers, half the time, I say half the time, it seemed all the time for me. I didn't see it where it didn't happen too often. Anything that required a reboot, as far as config or image change, usually had to reboot 3 times. Another one, and this might actually be closer to, this may be closer to something else, but we can't update an app because it always breaks every time we've updated it. So we have maybe something where they've tested it, like, hey, we've updated it, tried to update it 5 times, it broke each time. So we just don't do it anymore, and we just keep it over here, and we protect it, and we don't do anything to it, because if it breaks, it's a bad thing. But we don't know why, and so we don't do it, right? So this is something bad happens, and you don't know why every time you do it, right? So we always try to make an update, and we don't do this. And this kind of gets to the real heart of why I think we need to confront superstitions. Because the superstition here is not your app breaks every time it updates. When someone says that, I think, okay, great. If I force them to do an update, or if I try to pressure them and do that, it probably will break. Something will happen. But the problem is we don't know the why, and that's why this why is so important, right? Especially when it deals with an ill or a bad outcome due to a known input. Why? Why does it do this? And so really that's the thing you have to clear up. The superstition is the why. Why don't we know? Well, it could be because the programmers that originally created this were just one-time contractors, and then they left and they wrote nothing in the documentation about how to make sure this stays up to date. Or, oh yeah, we haven't touched it in 5 years, and that person has either been fired or wasn't paid enough, so left, or maybe wanted a promotion and decided to go someplace that would fulfill a role that was better for them, was better for their career. Well, guess what? That was the single point of failure for this app, and so we don't touch it anymore because otherwise it will break. And no one is willing to invest the time and the energy and the expertise to understand what this application is doing and how it works to the point that you can update it and keep it up to date. And the idea is, we'll take the risk of it getting attacked and getting compromised overtaking it down on our terms, which is a really bad bet to place. Because even if you were to break your own app, even if you were to bring a service down, you on your own terms can bring that up a lot more easily on your terms than an attacker's terms. And so we must always remember and try to encourage people. Yes, it may take time. May take money. It may take sitting down and really understanding what this app is. And maybe the idea is we go ahead and sunset this app and we have something new that is supportable that we're going to design from the start to be supportable. And maybe that's the solution. But really, you should sit down. And if this is going to be there for a while, great. We need to buckle down and sit and figure out how this works and make sure we're able to maintain it and update it and keep it supportable throughout its life cycle. And then we have things that are used as justification without critical examination but are no longer relevant, though they may have been in the past. So you may think about a phrase like, don't roll your own crypto. This used to be something that people would say, don't roll your own crypto. It's a really bad idea. Bad things will happen. And we've forgotten really why we say don't roll your own crypto. And we just say it without really critically thinking about it. If everybody obeyed the axiom, don't roll your own crypto, it's not really an axiom, but if everyone obeyed that general rule, that guideline, we wouldn't have cryptography. Everybody, in order to get the crypto we have today, had to roll their own crypto. Everybody had to create their own way of keeping things secret. Now, the admonishment is good. The admonishment is good from the standpoint of, look, if you want to roll your own crypto, that's fine. But understand the limitations that you as a person and your mathematical understanding of cryptographic algorithms have. Understand that entire teams of mathematicians, cryptographers, and cybersecurity experts for decades have been working on some kind of cryptography scheme that is going to be better than RSA, that is going to be better than Diffie-Hellman, that is going to be better than all these others. But you know what? We still use these today. We still use them. And they're very strong, depending on what type of your initiating vector is, or depending on your key size. Some of it just scales to that, right? It's very future-proof and very hard to break in many cases. So you really think you're going to take on a decades-hardened encryption scheme and by yourself create in a vacuum this one thing that you're going to be able to use and is not going to be broken? To a degree, rolling your own crypto can just be security through obscurity. Oh, it's a crypto scheme that doesn't really seem to be something that's standard, so someone would have to work a little bit just to understand what seems to be happening here to then crack it, break it, and basically render it useless. But that doesn't make it a very secure encryption scheme at all. So, but at some point, you have to roll your own crypto. At some point, you need to study and experiment with cryptography. But maybe don't run it in production. Maybe don't run it in something that you really care about or that entire communities and public people and customers are really relying on. Maybe that's where we shouldn't roll our own crypto. Double syncing before removing a USB drive. People brought that one up because, the first sync did its job. So the second and even the third sync that some people still teach to this day in colleges does nothing. You can just do the sync once and remove your USB drive. So that's a classic. Used to be a thing, actually used to be something to verify really hard that, something's not going to break when you remove a USB drive. Nowadays, though, it's not as big of a deal. Some people still say to this day, for instance, oh yeah, you need to have a crossover cable to connect a computer, or well, probably PC to PC, but a switch to a switch, you need a crossover cable. Well, not anymore. You don't need that anymore. Almost all switches and routers and firewalls and everything have auto MDIX. They have the ability to determine what the wiring and the pinout is on each side. As long as your wiring's the same on each side, you can actually use just any kind of cable you want. It'll be fine. You no longer need to cross over. But if you're dealing in an older system, you do. So you have to think about critically, what technology am I working with and does this apply anymore? But some people still say that. And don't put spaces in your file names. This used to be something that you didn't do. Also, you don't put spaces in file names because not everyone wrote their apps, not everyone wrote their OSs to deal with spaces in file names. Sometimes they could get truncated and cut off and everything. But if you're working with your software and your software is properly programmed, you shouldn't have to worry today about spaces in your file names. So again, these little one-liners that we put out there, these rules, these things, don't apply anymore. Resetting your password every 90 days or every 60 days. NIST says, yeah, you don't need that anymore if you're also following our admonishments to have MFA as well. So if you have MFA, you probably don't need to reset your password. I'd still reset it yearly. Why? Because maybe it got compromised, through something else. Well, don't reuse your passwords. Okay, but still, on the off chance that somehow it got secretly compromised, maybe we change it. Maybe we change the privileged ones every year for that purpose, but maybe regular user accounts. But do your user accounts have local admin or privileges? Then maybe you have to change them anyway. But again, it's that critical examination of why we're doing what we do. Some people still in compliance have loads of superstitions. You need to go through and change passwords every quarter. Why? Well, because you do. Ignorance, right? Why we do what we do. And the compliance industry has breeded a lot of people who don't understand the why, because all the tech and all the specifics get abstracted away. They just learn the rules. They don't learn the explanations necessarily. Not all the time. Some do, and some understand, but ones who just kind of get trained right into it will tend to not know. They just know the rule and they know what to look for and get the yes or no for. But some don't understand the real reasons why, and some certifying bodies don't teach the why either. And so you can come up with that. But we're all prone to it. As you've seen, the other things we've talked about, all of IT is prone to this. Because again, we have abstractions. We have things that we just don't need to know to do our job. And that's where the ignorance happens. And that's where not knowing why something works the way it works can end up causing a superstition. But it's important to know the why, especially with how bad things or good things happen, because it affects our decision making. Making better decisions requires more knowledge, requires more understanding. So the more understanding, the closer to reality, the closer to truth we become in our understanding of things, the better decisions we have the opportunity to make. So what are some superstitions you know about? Do you think any of these are superstitious? Did I put some in the wrong category? And do you think maybe this is a pointless topic anyway, and why did I watch this video? Put that down in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, and catch me on social media. I'll see you in the next one.